Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at the phrase, he shall be called a Nazarene. Our passage opens in Matthew chapter 2, verse 22. This is the story about Jesus and Herod the Great and the escape down into Egypt. But when that is, when Joseph, the adopted father of Jesus, when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there, and then being warned by God in a dream, he left for the regions of Galilee. The next verse continues, and he came and lived in a city called Nazareth. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophets. And here's the quote that was spoken from the prophets: he shall be called a Nazarene. So notice he comes to the city called Nazareth, and this is said to fulfill this quote from the prophets, where he is to be called a Nazarene. Now, we're going to look at the languages here. First of all, the Greek word Nazarite, it doesn't mean anything because it's not a Greek word, even though our account is written in Greek. It's being transliterated from the Hebrew term Nazareth, or we say Nazareth, actually Nazareth. Notice sometimes when you go from one language to another, the pronunciation gets changed a little bit, but it's important to see that change. Now, if you go to Nazareth today, and I went on the internet and just found this picture of the road sign. Notice they're still spelling Nazareth the same way today that they were spelling it way back in New Testament times. The name hasn't changed in all those times. And because he is going to live in Nazareth, he's going to be called and notice the Greek Nazoreas, somebody from Nazareth. Again, the Greek is translated or is transliterated. The same sound is made from the Hebrew term Nazareth. Now, the question has been brought up. Does this have anything to do with the Nazirite vow, which is found in the book of Numbers? For example, Numbers chapter 6 and verse 2, where God says, "Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when a man or a woman makes a special vow, the vow of a Nazirite," and there's that term Nazirite. Sounds a little bit like Nazareth, doesn't it? Well, when we look at the Hebrew, we see it spelled very differently. Instead of a sadi, it's spelled with a zayin. So even though it sounds loosely, if you're saying it in Greek, not if you're saying it in Hebrew, the words are no related. They're not related at all. Well, what is this word Nazarite? Notice the Nazari or Nazir. Notice it's got a zayin instead of a sadi, so two very different words. But this term, it comes from the Hebrew Nazir. In fact, it's used just in the rest of the verse. He'll make the vow of a Nazarite to Nazar himself, to dedicate himself. The vow of a Nazarite was a vow of dedication. This described one who was being dedicated to the Lord. However, when we look at Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 1, we see this same term, Nazareth. It comes from a root word. Let's read it. And then a shoot will spring forth from the stem of Jesse, and a branch, that is the Hebrew word a natzer, a branch from whose roots will bear fruit. You see, Nazareth doesn't come from a Nazirite vow, not a vow of dedication, but rather it comes from this term, that which is branched. It's interesting that Nazareth was back then it was a very, very small town. Maybe you can almost think of it as a little suburb from one of the surrounding cities, sort of a branch out from the cities. I'm not sure how it got its name, but this prophecy, notice, describes one who would be a branch from the roots of Jesse. And that points to Jesus as the Messiah, as the one who branched out from Jesse, and of course Jesse was the father of David, one who was a son of David. Now that same term, that same word Nazer, is used a bit later in Isaiah chapter 60. I'm going to start in verse 20. Your sun will no longer set. And of course, this is speaking of the future, the time when Israel will be planted in the land. Your sun will no longer set, nor will your moon wane, for you will have the Lord for an everlasting light, and the days of your mourning will be over. Then all your people will be righteous. They will possess the land forever. Notice the branch, the Nazar of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. Do you see what it's saying? It's saying that the branch refers not only to Messiah, but also to those who are connected, who are part of the branch of Messiah. That's what Jesus said when he said, I'm the vine, you are the branches, you must be connected to me. And if you are, notice you become the branch of my planting, the work of my hands. We are connected to Jesus not because of anything that we did, but because we are the work of his hands, and that means that he receives the glory.